Well, a lot of national sports are going on in a little bit of time. Joining me today to break them down is Eric Bay. Eric, thanks for joining me.
No problem. Like you said, tons of stuff to talk about.
Now, if we look at the NBA, just to kick things off, the Toronto Raptors, obviously a little bit of a disappointing ending, especially in that Game 7 versus the Boston Celtics. They just didn't come up to perform, especially a handful of players. Specifically on my mind, Pascal Siakam. There is another team joining them in the disappointing category. As of last night, the LA Clippers blew a huge lead, losing Game 7 to the Denver Nuggets. Eric, I guess first of all, Canadian Jamal Murray has really gone off this playoffs, but specifically last night, putting up 40 points. I mean, this guy's just amazing.
Yeah, that's the only way to put it. And you look at what he has done in this playoffs, he's really elevated his game, and that's what you have to do in the playoffs. Obviously, you need your big guys to perform, and you brought up the Raptors. That's kind of what didn't happen, especially in that Game 7. And again, you bring up the Clippers as well. That didn't happen. But I think the one thing out of all this that is kind of funny is I know you said it's a disappointing end for the Raptors, and in a way it is, but I think they did go a little bit further and push the Celtics to the brink and went a little bit farther than a lot of other people may have thought. And it's kind of funny when you look at Kawhi Leonard, and he said he didn't think the Raptors had what it took to win and didn't resign there for that reason. Well, if Kawhi is there, I mean, I think we're easily looking at another finals appearance for the Raptors. So just kind of funny how the way the cookie crumbles, excuse me. But you look at Jamal Murray, and that guy's been a beast and pretty impressive to come back from 2 series down 3-1. Hard to do it once, even more unbelievable to do it twice.
For sure, we saw it with Jamal Murray in the Utah Jazz series. It was a bit of an offensive showdown. So he was putting up 50 points in a night like it was nothing. Then they go to the Clippers, who obviously are a better defensive team, and he still lights it up, especially when games matter. I mean, Game 7, 40 points. Not just that, he's averaged 27.1 points over 14 playoff games, 5 rebounds, and 6.4 assists. So he's really just elevated all of his stats from, maybe an average starter on most teams to being one of the most dominant players in these playoffs. Looking now, if we're talking playoffs, to the NHL, the Dallas Stars were able to get it done in 5 games, advancing to the Stanley Cup Finals. Unfortunately for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they could not do the same as they lost a tight one going to double OT against the New York Islanders in Game 5. eBay, what'd you see from this game?
Yeah, first time the Tampa Bay Lightning are hitting Game 6, but I don't think there's really any cause for alarm. Yes, the Islanders have kind of not necessarily shut them down, limited their opportunities for sure, lower shot totals than we're used to seeing for Tampa Bay. But I really think the one thing for the Islanders that's going their way is Semyon Varlamov. I gave him some heck earlier in the playoff run. He wasn't really playing up to, a playoff goalie standard, but he's really shut the door these last few games, and particularly last night when you look at what he did do in overtime, because really Tampa Bay had most of the pressure. They've had all the possession, and then it was one good chance, for the Islanders to win it. And Varlamov made all those saves, kind of stood on his head a little bit. So, again, I think that the Islanders need that to continue if they are going to have a chance to force a Game 7. But for Tampa Bay, I don't think there's really any need to worry. They just have to keep doing what they're doing, and those breaks will eventually come. The law of averages dictates it.
Now, my only worry, I guess, with the Tampa Bay Lightning is Braden Point going to be playing in the future, Game 6 and Game 7? Because to me, that is a huge turning point for the Lightning. I mean, they've done it all playoffs without Steven Stamkos, who's usually their number, 1A, 1B, maybe center. Braden Point being the other 1A/1B center. But without Braden Point in this playoff series, the Islanders have won 2 games. The only 2 games that he's missed, they've won. So if Braden Point can come back, then I say no sweat it. Tampa Bay Lightning win it in 6 or maybe 7 games. But without Point in that lineup, I think there's just a huge hole. That is my only worry coming from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And like you said, Varlamov has really stepped up his game. We saw him get pulled even earlier in the playoffs. So nice to see if you are a New York Islanders fan. Eric, the MLB has made an announcement that we could be seeing something new coming in playoffs.
Yeah, they're going to work towards their kind of pseudo bubble, if you want to call it that. Obviously, each series is going to be limited to one city, either the home team in that first kind of wild card round, and then a neutral site location the rest of the way once we get into the more traditional playoff rounds, if you want to call it that, which I think is probably the right move, trying to limit that travel. The one thing that I am most interested about or curious about is especially the fact when we get into those later series, the 7 gamers like the ALCS and the World Series. The plan right now, anyways, is to play all 7 of those games back to back, meaning no breaks in between. And you look at the playoffs, usually you have, a day between, kind of like the NHL. This will be interesting because I'm not necessarily sure you need, a day between every game, but those pitchers are going to be taxed, and we're used to, shortening those rotations in a normal playoff year. Well, I don't think you can do that this year, especially if you are going 7 days straight in a 7-game series if it does reach that far. So this playoffs is really going to be about who has the most depth in pitching, and I think it's really going to be important when you look at, we've talked the Tampa Bay Lightning finishing series in 5 games. That's going to be important. What team can get the job done the quickest and preserve those arms for later on?
Well, it will be interesting to see, I guess, especially after how the MLB started off their season. A couple other things getting underway. Week 2 of the NFL kicks off on Thursday. The Browns take on the Bengals as well. The U.S. Open kicks off this weekend. Dustin Johnson is looking like he should be the #1 contender, but in golf, really, who knows week to week. Eric, it's always a pleasure getting to chat with you.
For sure. Thanks.